Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty controversial framework for what our source calls ideological subversion. We're going to break down the step-by-step process it lays out for how a society's values can, allegedly, be altered from the inside out. All right, so here's the game plan. First, we'll nail down what this framework even means by subversion. Then, we'll dig into the key areas it claims are targeted: beliefs, social structures, and law and order. And finally, we'll tie it all together with the main takeaway.
All right, first up, what exactly are we talking about when we say subversion in this context? Let's get into the core concept.
So, according to the source material, ideological subversion isn't about a direct attack. No, it's all about a deliberate, slow process that's designed to fundamentally change a country's entire perception of reality. And the key part? People don't even realize it's happening.
Now, just to be super clear, we're not talking about tanks and soldiers here. This framework is focused on a much slower, more subtle method. It's a process that's really designed to erode a society's core values from the inside.
And this is a really important slide. It lays out the 6 specific pillars of society that the framework claims are the main targets: religion, education, social life, power structures, labor relations, and, of course, law and order. Let's kick things off with that first group, a society's belief systems. Okay, so the framework kicks off with what it sees as the 2 absolute cornerstones of a society's worldview: religion and education. Now, what's interesting here, according to the source, is that the goal isn't just to get rid of religion. Instead, the framework argues the real objective is to ridicule traditional faith while replacing it with all these different sects and cults. And the idea is that these things basically serve to distract people from a society's original moral foundation. And you see a really similar pattern laid out for education. The argument goes that the focus gets pulled away from practical, pragmatic subjects like math and science. And in their place, the curriculum is allegedly filled with all these distracting subjects that are designed to shift the focus away from real constructive learning. All right, so after beliefs, where does the framework go next? It targets the very structure of society. We're talking about social life and where power is concentrated.
So here's the argument. You know those natural organic links that create a community? Things like friendships between neighbors and that sense of individual responsibility. The idea is that those get systematically replaced. And what replaces them? Artificial bureaucratic bodies, like institutions full of social workers, which, according to the source, end up taking away individual initiative. And this direct quote from the source material really hammers home the speaker's point about the supposed motivation behind these replacement structures. It alleges that these new institutions aren't really concerned with your well-being, but with just keeping their own bureaucratic machine running. Okay, so now the framework pivots to power structures, and it specifically challenges institutions that have a ton of influence but no public mandate. And it asks this really pointed question to get you thinking about the media's role in shaping how we all think. Now, the speaker uses some really strong, really provocative language here to describe the perceived influence of the media. The argument is that this unelected body holds a kind of monopolistic power to shape public thought, and basically gets to decide what's good or bad for the rest of us. And this is what the source claims is the end result of that unchecked power. The claim is that without any real competition, these media institutions don't reward excellence anymore. Instead, they allegedly create a system where just being average and towing the line is what's valued over actual merit. And that brings us to the final area this framework dives into, the system that's supposed to maintain order and give us all a sense of moral clarity. This section is all about how we perceive justice and the very definitions of right and wrong. So, to illustrate this idea, the speaker uses the example of pop culture, especially movies. The argument is that there's been this total flip. Police officers and military leaders who used to be shown as heroes are now often depicted as incompetent or even malicious. Meanwhile, criminals are portrayed as these sympathetic victims of an unfair society. So, what's the supposed outcome of this big cultural shift? Well, it's a state the source calls moral relativity. It's described as a process where those clear, basic moral principles get all fuzzy, blurring the lines between what's good and what's evil. And this quote is used as a prime example of how language and even legal arguments are allegedly twisted to support this idea of moral relativity. The argument is that a person's actual guilt takes a backseat to legal jargon, and even the most fundamental moral laws get questioned. All right, so we've walked through all the different pieces of this puzzle. Let's pull it all together now and see the big picture that the source is painting. So according to this framework, it's not about attacking these 6 areas, religion, education, social life, and so on, one by one. The whole idea is that the erosion in all of these areas is meant to work together, in concert, to totally reshape a society over a long period of time. So in the end, after laying out this entire, pretty detailed framework, the source material leaves us with a really provocative and honestly a pretty complex question. When we see our values and institutions being challenged, how do you tell the difference between a society just naturally changing and evolving and a deliberate, guided process of subversion? That's really the core question this whole framework leaves you to wrestle with.
So we have religion, we have education, we have social life, we have power structure, we have labor relations, unions. The natural bodies of administration, which are traditionally either elected by people at large or appointed by elected leaders of society, are being actively substituted by artificial bodies. The bodies of people, groups of people whom nobody elected. Never. As a matter of fact, most of the people don't like them at all, and yet they exist. One of such group is media. Who elected them? How come they have so much power? Almost monopolistic power on your mind. They can rape your mind. But who elected them? How come they have a nerve to decide what is good and what is bad for the elected by you, president and his administration? Who the hell are they? They think they know. They don't. The level of mediocrity in a big establishment like New York Times, Los Angeles Times, major television network, you don't have to be excellent journalist. You have to be exactly a mediocre journalist. That's easier to survive. There's no competition anymore. You have your good, nice income, $100,000 a year. That's it. Whether you are better or worse doesn't really matter anymore. As soon as you're smiling to the camera and do your job. Okay. Together with that, there is another process. Law enforcement, law and order organization and structure is being eroded. One day to burn a house of my enemy, and he wouldn't do it. He's a nice fellow. Erosion. A slow substitution of basic moral principles, whereby a criminal is not a criminal actually. He's a defendant. Even if his guilt is proven, there is still a doubt. To kill or not to kill, to be or not to be. Thou shalt not kill, yes. But this line may not necessarily be applicable to a murderer. Thou shalt not murder. That should be the presumption, not that thou shalt not kill.